Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Before we begin, it's always our tradition to go around the room and say our names. I'll begin if I may. My name is Roy.
I'm Mark.
I'm Harley.
My name is Michael.
I'm Wally. I'm Philip.
Mark.
I'm Ricky.
Jerry.
Joe.
Jose.
My name is Mark.
Peter.
Michael.
James. I'm Clint.
Clay.
Dan.
Jack.
My name is Cass.
I'm David. They are.
Yes.
Brian.
Sam.
David.
My name is Jerry. Richard.
My name is David.
I'm Hal. Joe.
Jay.
Richard.
Al.
I'm Michael.
I'm Len.
I'm Larry.
Larry Robinson has been practicing meditation since 1969 and is a student of both Zen and Vipassana. He's a retired psychotherapist whose work focuses on ecopsychology. Larry has served on the Sebastopol City Council since 1998, including 2 terms as mayor. His passion is the restoration of the oral tradition of poetry. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Roy. And thank you all for making me welcome on this beautiful spring day. David Budbill says, Han Shan, that great and crazy Chinese poet 1,000 years ago, said we're all like bugs in a bowl. Every day climbing up the sides, sliding back down over and over again. I say that's right. So sit in the bottom of the bowl, head in your hands, moan, cry, feel sorry for yourself. Or look around. Greet your fellow bugs. Say, hey, how are you doing? Say, nice bowl. And you know, in this, I think he captures the essence of living a Buddhist life. You know, we all come to this practice, or indeed any spiritual practice, for a variety of reasons. It may be because of some profound longing for something more. It may be because the suffering in our lives is just too much to bear. It may be from curiosity. It may be from desperation. There's all kinds of reasons, but ultimately it comes down to the question, and the direction we choose comes down to the question of do we want to get out of this world or get more deeply into it? And sometimes we start this practice as a way to try to get out of our suffering, out of our pain. And certainly there are religions and spiritual practices that speak of a better life somewhere, a better world somewhere, heaven, reincarnation in better conditions. But Buddhism leads us back into this world ultimately, back into greeting and living with and for our fellow bugs and loving this miraculous world, as Wendell Berry says, that you did not create, but which is a gift to you. So Dogen Zenji, who was the one who brought the Dharma from China to Japan. In his Genjo Koan says, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened in the 10,000 things, by which he means to be awakened into everything in this world. And by studying the self, what he's really talking about is our practice of attentiveness, of mindfulness. And as we go deeper and deeper into this study of the self, we find that there really is no self to study. I've been looking for 40-some years for it, and I'm just more and more profoundly impressed by the reality of my own unreality. You know, most of us spend our lives trying to reify, solidify, defend, reinforce, protect something that doesn't really exist, which is ourselves. Which is not to say that, this body and this remembered structure are illusory. The illusion is of our separateness. In fact, in Buddhist psychology, the literal definition of ego is the illusion of separateness. The illusion that you and I are not absolutely interdependent with each other, and that you and I and the flowers are not intimately connected, and this floor and these walls and the ocean and the birds and the air and the very structure of the earth. The idea that we are separate from each other and from all of this, from this community of being, is what gives rise to the suffering that Buddha speaks of in the first noble truth. He says life is suffering. And by that he doesn't mean that there isn't joy and beauty and love. What he means, he uses the word dukkha. And the literal meaning of dukkha is not so much suffering the way we think of it, but it means literally the inherent unsatisfactoriness of things. And when we look for satisfaction, final, ultimate satisfaction in things that are inherently unsatisfying, we suffer. And the second noble truth, of course, is that there is, that it's our attachment to what is constantly changing, or aversion to what is present, that causes the suffering. And the third truth is that there is a way out of the suffering. But it's not by leaving this world, but by going even more deeply into the world, even more deeply into this inquiry into who am I? Who is this self that I think myself to be? And this is why our daily practice, our weekly practice, however we do it, whether it's 5 minutes a day or an hour a day or once a week with the Sangha, whatever the practice is, there's a continuity of this inquiry of just sitting with our existence itself, not trying to get out of our discomfort with our thoughts, our discomfort with our knees or our back, our discomfort with our relationships or the quality of our lives, but to settle into that ever more deeply, to breathe into the discomfort and to find a place of comfort in the discomfort, if that makes sense. Our language doesn't quite describe how to do that. But there is, in our practice, a path of just settling into rather than resisting what causes our discomfort. And that settling into it is where we find the freedom. And the freedom doesn't come from defending against the things of the world that frighten us or threaten us, but by softening to that and opening to it. In the Mahayana tradition, there is a concept of the bodhisattva, which means literally the awakened being. And that really is all of us, whether we know it or not. So the practice is not to become awakened, but to remember our natural awakened state. That is who we are. We are already Buddhas. We are already bodhisattvas. But the path of the bodhisattva is the path of living with and for all beings. And it's not, well, it's kind of a refutation of the idea of individual enlightenment. That if I meditate long enough and I purify my life and I struggle and I work hard enough, I can get enlightened. The idea of me being enlightened is itself one of the obstacles, because that reinforces that there is a separate I who can be enlightened. The bodhisattva, whether it's through one glimpse or a slowly opening understanding, knows that we are all in it together. So the bodhisattva vow is beings are numberless. I mean, there's various forms of this, but essentially it's beings are numberless. I vow to awaken them. Suffering is endless. I vow to end it. The Buddha gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha's life is everything. I vow to live it. And on the face of it, that's a pretty tall order. And it may sound like hubris, it may sound like arrogance, but when you sit with it long enough, you realize that it's simply a statement of reality. That we all feel this. Come on in. Your seat is awaiting you. We all feel this longing for the infinite. This is one of the beauties of the Sufi practice, is to teach the value of longing, which is profoundly different from the grasping that leads to suffering. Longing is that sense in us that is reaching out to be one with everything. And in the Sufi path, we want to increase that longing so we're not attaching it to a particular object, which is one of the old sayings, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Because it's your idea of the Buddha stands between you and your own liberation. So longing is to reach out for something beyond what we can imagine, what we can become, and to surrender to that longing. So we all feel that somewhere deep inside us. And that is the totality of the universe calling us into awakening to it, calling us out of our separateness. So the Bodhisattva recognizes this deep human and indeed existent part of every life, human or greater than human, this longing to be more, to be part of everything. And he understands that until every being is awakened, he cannot be awakened or cannot be free himself. When you understand that we are all totally interconnected and interdependent, it's absurd to think that you could be enlightened and you couldn't. So you commit yourself to living with and for all beings, to withhold stepping off the wheel until every being is liberated. And that may seem like a sacrifice, but really it's just an understanding of the deepest level of reality. And when you make that commitment, and maybe many of you already do make that bodhisattva vow on a regular basis or have done it once in a ceremony, you experience the liberation from this small sense of self. That's the paradox in this path. Your freedom comes from letting go of the quest for individual freedom. And when you commit your life and all your energies to serving this miraculous and mysterious existence with your fellow bugs in this beautiful bowl, you're free. Because then you no longer have to defend anything. Somebody else's opinion of you is simply that. Simply an opinion of you. It's not who you are. The loss of loved ones, which we all know, brings us closer into our shared humanity. Naomi Shihab Nye was a wonderful Palestinian-American poet. Has this poem about kindness where she says, "Before you can know the true meaning of kindness, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all that must go so you know how great the desolate landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you can know the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with the plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you can know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak with it until your tongue grips the thread of all sorrow and you see the full size of the cloth. Then you know it is only kindness that means anything anymore. Only kindness that wakes you up in the morning and ties your shoes and sends you out in the world to purchase bread and mail letters. Only kindness that lifts its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is I you have been looking for all your life, and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. So coming to terms with loss as a continual experience in this life, we can either respond to that by walling ourselves off, by not loving, by not risking experiencing sorrow, or we can let it soften our hearts and look around and look at every person in this room and know that we are all dying at this moment. And everyone you know is dying. Even those people that you are in struggle with. Even the people that are your avowed enemies, they are dying and they are suffering too. And everyone they know will die. And if you open to that, if you can open your heart to the heart of the world, you find the deepest freedom there is. In the corner there, I see a statue of Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin is the Chinese incarnation of Avalokiteshvar, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion. And there are many, many forms of Kuan Yin in Japan. It's Kannon or Kanzeon. In Tibet and Bhutan, it's Chenresig, but it's the same archetype of the Buddha of compassion, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who's pictured as having 10,000 hands and 10,000 ears and 10,000 eyes, who hears the cries of the world. In my house, at the very geographic center of the house, I have a shrine to Kuan Yin, and every morning I light a candle and a stick of incense and ask for that energy to enter my life, to be able to hear the cries of the world, and to know that that's far beyond the capacity of my ordinary sense of myself. But when I open to more than that, and I open to the discomfort that that brings, there's a deeper level of comfort and freedom that arrives. So trusting that we have a place here, that we do belong here, that we are just fellow bugs in this beautiful bowl brings its own enlightenment. Mary Oliver, in a poem that you may know, says, and this is direct contradiction to a lot of religious teachings, which I think in itself speaks to the truth of it. She says, "You do not have to be good." Now that's one of the most profound lines in all of the body of poetry that I know. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I'll tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscape, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Your place in the family of things. And what she's saying there, if it's not obvious enough, is that every one of us has a place in the family of things, and we are a family. All us fellow bugs, and the whales, and the bacteria, and the species that are going extinct as we speak, and the people who are dying from gunfire or disease or hunger or neglect. We are all family, and we all belong here. And it's also saying that each part of us belongs here. That there is no feeling, no thought, no part of our personalities that does not have a rightful and legitimate place in our lives and in this world. Despite the messages that we get from churches or politicians or parents, there is no part of us that is not an essential part of the wholeness of the universe. So don't let anyone ever shame you out of being who you are, because who you are is needed for the wholeness of the world. Every part of you is needed for the wholeness of the world. And the world is fragmented. And if we take that bodhisattva vow seriously, our work is to restore the wholeness of the world, to see that there is no divide between this shore and the other shore, between heaven and earth. Once we make that distinction between good and bad, heaven and earth are set aside infinitely. When we understand, as our practice shows us as we do it, doesn't come as an idea, but a deep felt experience as you practice. This interconnectedness is what holds us all. And In the arms of this, we find safety. Let go of fear and rest in that which is. For peace, like love, comes to those who allow it. Let go of fear and rest in the oneness. Watch the breath rise and fall. Watch the tides rise and fall. Watch walls rise and fall. Watch towers rise and fall. Watch empires rise and fall. Watch the breath rise and fall. Let go of fear and rest in the arms of the one who has always held you, the one who holds oceans and empires and atoms and stars. Let go of fear and watch what happens next. So if we can watch this play of life with curiosity, with a friendly curiosity, as we sit in meditation, we can watch the thoughts arise and fall. We can watch emotional states arise and fall. We can watch physical sensations arise and fall. What we are is the watcher. And if you watch without attachment or aversion, not trying to quiet the thoughts. Anybody who's meditated for more than a few minutes knows that doesn't work. That's not what it's about anyway. It's not about quieting your thoughts or feeling better or getting to a state of bliss. That's not the point. The point is to watch the play of life. And you watch the play of life through watching what arises as you sit. And watch your tendency to get attached to this train of thought. Because this train of thought, if I follow it enough, promises to satisfy this whatever. You follow it out and you realize it doesn't do that. But you can't help wanting to do that. So you simply notice you're wanting to do that. And right there you come back to your breath or your mantra or your body scan or whatever your particular practice is. It's just noticing without judgment, with curiosity and friendliness. And this practice then extends out into our lives. We engage with love and curiosity and compassion. This is the path of the Bodhisattva. Not attached to any outcome. And that's hard to do. So we let go of trying to be unattached. You just let go, let go, let go. As with each inhale, we let go. The exhale has to follow. You can hold your breath, as some of us did as kids till we're blue in the face, but ultimately you let go of that breath. That's the freedom. It comes naturally. We don't have to grasp it. There is no need to hold on to even the idea of freedom or enlightenment, because we already are enlightened. The remembering of it will come. It is coming. You don't have to force it. You don't have to fight it. You simply have to keep showing up. It's that simple. And nobody stands in the way of that. Everything that we experience is an opportunity to awaken. And awakening is simply being who we are and loving that. So I know we've got just a few minutes left, so I want to leave some time for questions or comments. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Asa. It's great to be here. I really appreciate your gentleness of spirit and the clarity that you present. It's pretty enjoyable and exciting, so I thank you for that. As I was driving here, I was driving down Valencia, and there was this long procession of people in white robes and red whatever from probably an Episcopal Catholic church. I guess it's Palm Sunday, and which reminded me of a time that I was at St. Ignatius Church. And I've only been there, I think maybe only once, inside the church. And when you talk about Kuan Yin, it made me think about this huge presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the idea of compassion, of course, and the Pietà. So it sort of brought my mind to that thought also. And I just want to it was fun to make that kind of connection with, it's interesting to make a lot of those connections around, the idea of being good, and it's not necessary. And certainly Buddhism teaches us about the issues related to greed, hatred, and delusion, and lying, cheating, and stealing, and that they clearly are sources of dukkha. And so I always like making those kinds of connections, so thank you.
Thank you for that observation. Yeah. In the Catholic world, in the European world, and in Latin America, the Virgin Mary is the same. It's the embodiment of the same archetype that, the church lays an image on. But the people who walk in those processions, that's what they're feeling, is that love and compassion through her, or seeking. Yeah. Yes.
I'm not quite sure how this relates to what you're saying, but your speech really moved me. And last night I saw the movie Oz the Great and Powerful, okay? And everybody said, oh, don't go see that movie, it's a horrible movie, and James Franco's terrible. and I thought, okay, well, that's fine. And I thought, well, I'm going to go see it anyway. And I absolutely loved the movie. And James Franco, he's not like the original Wizard of Oz, he's much too passive. He was fantastic. I thought he really presented the image of an Oz that was really compassionate, warm-hearted, and confused. And but what I came away with was a sense of hope about the world, and when someone is not what they appear to be, but approach something with an open heart and with a sense of wonder and courage, that it just worked out. And I just recommend it as a fun movie to go to for a Buddhist, to look at what your expectations might be and what you might find that aren't quite like the reviews were. They weren't like, it's not like the Wizard of Oz that we grew up with. Anyway, it was just really a fun movie for me, and I really was inspired by it. And reminded me of what you're talking about when you come with expectations, and your expectations are different than what the reality is, but they're actually even better than what it was. So anyway.
What a wonderful practice to hold that. With everything you meet, to imagine that it might be different from your expectations or what the critics said it was, or anybody. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes.
I loved how you wove poetry into your talk. Thank you for that. And I'm curious how you use, and it's almost in a chant-like way, how you use poetry in your practice. Is it an active part of your practice? And if so, how do you access its power?
Thank you. Poetry is something that I discovered later in life. I had it ruined for me in high school and college by teachers who, Billy Collins has a description of tying a poem to a chair and beating the meaning out of it with a rubber hose, which destroys it. So that was the experience I had. And about 20 years ago, a dear friend of mine who is sometimes a member of this Sangha, I think many of you know Doug Von Koss, introduced me to the oral tradition of poetry, which has just totally transformed my experience of it. So I began to take poetry into my life as medicine and choose those poems that I would memorize, invite to come live with me. And they live deep in me. And at odd moments, rather than, I don't listen to commercial radio or watch TV with commercials, so I don't hear those commercial jingles anymore like I used to. But the place that those kind of earworms lodge in your head, good poetry can do. It's like a koan that you never completely understand it, but you know that it's doing something. It's medicine that's doing some transformative work on the soul. So that's a practice that I highly recommend. Yes, sir.
When I hear Dharma, I always feel like I have to find a way to make it practical in my daily life in order to live it and make it work. When you were talking about people coming with attachment to end products and the necessary and the inevitable interdependence of all of us, it made me wonder, well, you're a politician, and you work with people who bring tremendous attachment to end products, and frequently at loggerheads with each other because the different factions of people want different end products.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder then, how do you bring that to the practice of trying to get the work done in the city where you're working? That's what I thought.
Yes. Well, I actually retired from politics 3 years ago with great gratitude. For 12 years I was, although I don't hold office anymore, but I'm still very engaged in that world. But engagement in the world of politics itself is a profound spiritual practice for me. And there's four key practices that I try to incorporate. The first is to pay attention, which means paying attention to all the currents that are going on in the political environment, but also to my own reactions and responses to those. The second is to show up, by which I mean bring everything that I am and everything I have to the engagement. I don't hold secrets. I don't keep secret agendas, and I don't hold back. The third is to speak the truth. Which sometimes gets you into trouble. But the fourth is probably the hardest, the one that you're talking about, I think, is to let go of attachment to the outcome. And if you care passionately about, as I do, about social justice, about the health of our ecosystem, then it's very difficult to let go of your ideas of how things ought to be. But the practice is to let go of the outcome. It doesn't mean be wishy-washy. It doesn't mean don't advocate for your vision of the world that you want. But it means work for it, but pay attention to where things are really moving. And the difference between an idealist and an ideologue is how you hold your ideals. And I try to be an idealist, and at times I'm an ideologue. An ideologue, well, ideology is kind of an intellectual shortcut. It keeps you from having to do the hard questioning and respond to changing conditions. And ideology is a roadmap that tells you what to do at every step. And it's destroying our culture. Whatever your ideology is, it's destructive because people then are seen as the obstacle to the goal, and you just bulldoze them. Idealism, an idealist sees the vision, the ideal as a pole star or a compass to steer by, but not the roadmap. So I know that my vision of a sustainable world of peace and justice, I hold that ideal, but getting there means going in all kinds of detours and unexpected directions. But being flexible and willing to adjust my tactics and how to get there.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
During your talk, which I really appreciated, that was great. Talk about you don't need to be good, and it's I don't want to put words in that, but it sounds like you want being authentic. And I get that, and I see people who are trying to be good, and so they have like this moral checklist that they have to do, and when they do it, they're very good, and they're terrible people. But if you put that aside, how do you live an ethical life? What do you decide is right action versus not right action?
Well, I try not to do any harm. I try to ease suffering when I see it. I try to speak the truth. I try not to take what doesn't belong to me. Those are some of my compass points for steering an ethical life. Is that?
No, I get that. I don't know. I mean, I think I get where you're going with that. It's just, it seems like it's an easy, it's an easy road to deviate from just right living versus the checklist of what I have to do, and then I'll be good if I do that.
Yeah. If you're paying attention and if your heart is open with compassion, you may make mistakes, but you'll see your mistakes and be able to correct them. But most of the time, you'll be acting in a way that's beneficial to the world.
Well, thank you, Larry, for today. We really appreciate having you here. It's always special when you're here with us. Thank you. We have some announcements.
We're working on an update of our roster. So if you had an address change or a change of your phone number, I'd appreciate it if you could make it on this paper copy and I'll put it in our database. And I will leave this out there by the sign-up sheet.
Yeah, I just want to mention that Earth Day is coming up, and I believe I know Spirit Rock is having a wonderful event. I believe it's the first Saturday in April.
I'm sorry.
And it's going to be held outside in the beautiful land, and spring blossoms, and they're having an incredible lineup of, like, I think every teacher that's connected with Spirit Rock is going to be there, but it's going to be like a picnic, and also I'm sure some, whatever, it's going to be a wonderful day, and you can look it up on their website, and it's, I believe, the first Saturday in April.
Yeah.
Maybe you heard me mention this before, but also the first weekend of April, I'm producing a Tantra workshop. And if anyone has any question about what that is and what it's about, please come see me.
Also the 7th of April. A film that I worked on that many in the Sangha and other Buddhist communities have supported, called Transgender Tuesdays. It has a free showing at the USF Human Rights Film Festival at 2 o'clock at USF. Come see Tony Patchell and Larry Yang and yeah, small parts. But they're,
Thank you. I'd like to announce if you feel spontaneously inspired, there'll be a group of people sitting here at 3 o'clock, and then we will clean this building, if you like.
Ben, our host.
I'm Len, the host today. There are some snacks on the table out there, and if you would like tea, there's hot water. Help yourself. Please wash your cup with soap and water and put it in a drainer. If you're new to or visiting and would like information, you can sign up on the sign-up sheet on the table to your right when you go out the door. I will be going around with a Dana bowl, and it's suggested $5 to $8 to support the work of the Sangha, more or less as you are able. And at 12:30, several people gather outside the door to go to lunch if you would like to join in.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, let's go ahead and stand for our dedication of prayer,
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month, and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live. Please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.